So the real issue, Sammy, is you eat too much pasta anyway. So I don't really think that you have an opinion one way or the other on how to prepare your steak, whether it's medium well. I think we all are agreeing that medium well is out. That should be, but medium, I don't know. We're going to talk about this with Greg Braggs in a matter of minutes. But it's now been. I love that Chicago fans have to be divided on pretty much everything in the world. Now it's the steak. The steak preparation is the thing that we've now come down to. We don't agree on the coach. We still don't agree on which quarterback we should have ended up with coming into this year. And now you add in steak. Caleb's out there stoking the fires of like, yeah, I like my steak medium. And now people are ready to go back to Justin Fields because of that. But listen, there's so much more to get into. So Sammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Rank.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois, the sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank. One of the greatest nights in sports. Not only do we have Take It to the Rank, we got the Tape Never Lies Network coming up in about 90 minutes. AEW. I think Swerve Strickland. Wait, who's going for the title tonight on AEW? I'm catching up. I almost have caught up, by the way, on the challenge. So the challenge did happen. I almost caught up to it. And then my TV that has it all. You can't stream the challenge this year. And it's disappointing. I'm almost to the penultimate, not the penultimate, the penultimate episode before. No, it's the last guy's elimination. It doesn't matter. Thanks for being here, for Take It to the Rank. Really appreciate you joining us here this evening as we sit here and wait on news on the Bears coaching search, which is actually going a lot slower than a lot of us would have liked. And here to break it down from CHGO, our good friend Greg Braggs is joining us, and also one of the meatballs who jumped into the Caleb Williams steak controversy. You were really torn up about this earlier today.
Well, I always take exception to anyone that doesn't cook their steak exactly like I do. It's an easy argument. It's kind of like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? It's, it's playing the classics. Let's argue about how we cook our steaks. And so for me, it's medium rare. And if you do not cook your steak medium rare, then you are liable to be a serial killer. And that's my stance on it.
Fair enough. I'm one of those people that just never cooks it. You just eat it raw. Like, do you think bear? Have you ever seen a bear sitting there just skewering something over an open flame? Like, no.
Well, if he could, he would. I mean, now the question is,
they're the most worried about forest fires.
Well, the question is, does Bear Man eat the steak raw, or does he cook it, or does he just, you know what I mean? Does Don the Bear Man just eat steak raw?
It's good. Yeah. Well, listen, that's a debate for another day. I'm sure the comments here in the section here are going to fill up with a lot of conversation about the steaks and everything like that. Before we get to the Bears coaching search, though, I want to ask you, considering the Lions didn't play over the weekend, was there a better could we have asked for a better outcome than what we got out of the Vikings and the Packers this weekend? I know, even as a Sam Darnold apologist, I mean, I'm still happy the Vikings got eliminated. Could that have worked out any better for us?
Yeah, I don't think it could have. I really don't. I mean, maybe. I mean, we have this rivalry going on now with Washington Commander fans. I mean, they were in your chat here for how many weeks after that Hail Mary game. So I think there was a lot of fans rooting against Washington on Sunday night. So I guess that probably is the one that fell short. But just from a division standpoint, and I was simply just tweeting out facts after each game. I'm done talking crap anymore. I'm not going to overhype the team. I'm going to hold to these rules this offseason that I promised to here on this program. So I put out some simple facts, that the Packers are 0-2 in 2025 and the Bears are 1-0.
That's true. That's facts are nonpartisan.
Right. I'm not
again.
trying to talk smack, but the facts are the Bears have just as many playoff wins as the Vikings and Packers do this season.
100%.
Now, like, you can take that stat however you want to take it when you hear that. But for me, I'm just laying out the facts here.
I will tell you, because the most common response anytime that you point out the facts, and again, the facts just are the facts. There's no opinion attached to facts. Right. Although in this political climate, there is actually an argument to that. However, I will say that the pushback from most people who might be fans of the Vikings or the Packers, and the Vikings are usually the ones I don't talk a lot of S to, because I'm like, I get a lot. All the people I know who are Vikings fans usually tend to be cool people, and it's like, all right, they're even more pessimistic than us. If you can believe this, spend some time with a Vikings fan. However, but from the other team from the North, a lot of times you get the pushback of like, yeah, well, at least we made the playoffs. And I'm like, can we break this down for just a moment? Because obviously the ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, when you're counting like moral victories or whatever as victories, it is a little sad, maybe a little pathetic. However, I will say there's going to be 31 fan bases that are disappointed that they are not going to win it. Actually, that's not true, because I think Commander fans don't care. I had forgotten that Commander fans are obsessed with us. I had muted so many of them that they don't even register anymore. Although I almost made a joke about Jane Daniels with, like, when he went, was it Nelly who used to wear the Band-Aid on his face? And I forgot how fragile they get, because he's going to the Ben Roethlisberger school of like, here's how injured I remember. Ben Roethlisberger would give his injury report all the time. Like, yeah, I think my spleen hurts. I'm like, how do you know if your spleen hurts? Whatever. So I forgot about that. Yeah. So the Commander fans don't care because they already think that they won the Super Bowl, so they don't matter. But 30 other fan bases are going to be disappointed that their team does not win the Super Bowl this season. So I push back and I say, you know what? Like, the Bears season didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go. I thought they would win 12 games. I thought they would be very competitive. That clearly did not work out. By the way, and for anybody who goes onto my TikTok or any of those things, he goes, hey, how did your 12-5 prediction work out? It missed. There it is. But I will say that beating the Packers on week 18 in a game they clearly wanted to win because they started Jordan Love and all those guys, I think it feels pretty good. I'm not going to apologize for it. I would have rather missed the playoffs and beat Green Bay than get embarrassed in the playoffs once again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, come on. I think Green Bay needs to start. I mean, and it seems like trouble is in paradise in Green Bay. Did you see the Tucker Kraft interview after the game in the locker room where
I missed that? I was too busy coaching my all-star team.
Yeah,
but, I mean, what happened? What did Tucker Kraft say?
Tucker basically alluded to, like, they could feel this coming the last few weeks, that he needs to be a better leader because there wasn't great leadership in the locker room, it feels like. So while, 10 wins and a playoff appearance, or, it seems nice for Green Bay, doesn't feel like everything is going right, in Green Bayville, it's a real shame. And, I wish nothing. I'm not going to wish ill on them. No. It's bad karma, but I'm just stating facts.
Is Nagler also doing the thing about like, hey, we have the youngest roster in the NFL? Like, I remember that was a big selling point for them last year. Like, hey, look at what we did with the youngest roster in the NFL. Was last year the year they choked in San Francisco, or was it 2 years ago? Or is it every year? I guess that's a redundant
Right, it's
question.
every year.
Was last year the first time that Jordan Love choked in San Francisco? I think it was. So they had a lot of like, yay, we did this. You would have to, that's right. Okay. So they came out after that playoff loss last year, like, hey, youngest roster in the league.
Right.
Our third year quarterback, who was actually in his first start, whatever it was, however they spun it, they were supposed to be better.
Right.
And I think you can make the argument that they regressed. And again, we will talk about the Chicago Bears. I think it's important to point out, the NFL changes so much from year to year. And if you're not cashing in your opportunities when you have the chance, there's no guarantees for next year. And I would even say, if you're a Packers fan, how positive can you really feel? You know what I'm saying? Like, at least we have reasons for our delusion. I don't know what you'd sell to Packer fans right now.
Well, it's a different level of expectation, right? Like I'm watching that Amanda Vance Steelers fan girl on Twitter holding up a fire Mike Tomlin sign at the game while their team is in the playoffs. I put it on Twitter. I'm like, my Bears brain cannot comprehend this. Like, I would kill to be in the playoffs, and I wouldn't, like, we talk about firing our coaches every year, it seems like the last few years, but we're not in the playoffs. We're like one of the worst teams in football. Here's this girl. She's holding up a fire Tomlin sign during a playoff game. It's absolutely insane. But there's just fan bases that live on a different stratosphere than we do. Packers fans are like that. So I think something that we all talked about when Jordan Love signed that contract was, would it be best case scenario for him to be just good enough that they had to pay him, but not good enough to ever actually win the big one? And right now they're kind of in that lane. I think Jordan Love has the ability to be great. You know, he's already, how many years into his career? 5 years, right? But at the same time, as the years keep ticking off, you can only say, well, we're the youngest roster. Hey, this is only his second year as a starter. Like, every year this ticks by, the clock's going to start winding on them. So, I think there's areas where they got better, but at the same time, their expectations were way higher. Look at how much further they got in the playoffs. And so that's when if we ever get to that point where we're playing high stakes poker once again, and now we're getting to a point where we're thinking about firing a head coach after a 10-win season like Lovie Smith once upon a time. We're so far removed from that level of entitlement that we're just like, please save us, anyone, something, please, just one good year. But for these guys, they have a different level that is what they consider the standard. And I think for most Packer fans, if they're ignoring the Bears brethren that's pestering them, I think they would all admit that they didn't reach their standard of expectation this year. So simply, they regressed. Last year, they exceeded their standard of expectation. Right? If you're looking at it through a Packers fan's lens. So from that, you can talk about stats and everything else and all the different variables of why it didn't work out this year. But they last year exceeded expectations. This year, they didn't meet them.
Yeah, and you don't even have the thing of to hold your hat on about like, well, we beat the Bears and we've now won 15 consecutive games against them. They haven't beaten the Bears this season. Our quarterback, Caleb Williams, has never lost a game in Lambeau Field. So some of those crutches that they've had over the last couple of years aren't there right now. So it's even worse. And I think it's even more pronounced for them. The funniest part of it, of this whole thing too, is like going back to a week ago, is how many people would publish articles or go out online or do whatever and be like, hey, Packers are my sleeper team for the Super Bowl. And I'm like, in what world did that ever make sense to you? Like, I could see like the people who are talking up the Commanders right now, I think and this is even going back to last week, would have had a better case of like, I get what they're saying. Packers, no, like that was inevitable. They were not going to the Super. They were not a threat at all to the Super. They weren't a threat at all to the Eagles. Like it was just not going to happen. And I can't believe how many people, and I guess when you think about it, like this is why our friend Derek Stevens has these giant hotels in Las Vegas and around the country. And by the way, speaking of which, the world's largest sports book in Las Vegas is right at your fingertips in Illinois. The Circa Sports app is sports betting the way it should be. Bet anywhere in Illinois and experience high betting limits, better money line splits, more in-game betting, and the best customer service. Download your new bookie today. Visit circasports.com and start betting like a pro from anywhere in Illinois. And if you or someone you know has a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234. So it's amusing to me that the Packer fans and people who got caught, I think it's a lot of the media. They must, by the way, when I was watching that Packers game and they were showing, I think it was their offensive coordinator, do they get a Groupon for eyebrow threading? Because it feels like they all have the same eyebrows. You know what I'm saying? They're all very well manicured.
I did not catch that observation. Now, if you had
Yeah.
texted me that during the game, maybe, but that alarm didn't ring off for me.
That didn't go off. Well, I was still in the, actually, you know what? We were not in the euphoria. So I'm going to take a quick side turn. So I coach a U10 All-Star team of girls. And 2 weeks ago, we took third place in a tournament. This past weekend, we took first place, but it was based on a table. So we actually had to sit here, and because they didn't think much of us, I think they considered us the Houston Texans of this tournament. So we had all morning, all 4 of our games were Saturday, Sunday morning. Like they didn't expect us to playing games that matter on Sunday, so they didn't put us in the prime spot. So we actually had to sit and wait for that. So I was I should have texted you, but I was still sort of sweating out a tournament which we came into first place. So it was good though to see and one of the dads is an Eagles fan. So we were kind of like bonding, like, yeah, dude, this is great. I will say though, the Vikings, and I do not allow Sam Darnold slander here.
That's right.
on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to be said about the Honolulu flu, but I don't think the Vikings, 14 wins, commendable. KOC did a great job. You look at this side. Now, I think that
this is a fantastic waste of time. That's what it was.
Yeah, and honestly, you know what? I think that Sam Darnold has probably lost the opportunity to go to some place and get a huge payday. His best course of action is likely to take a discounted hometown rate from the Vikings, be the bridge quarterback for Minnesota. And I felt coming into this season, at some point they're going to have to go to JJ McCarthy because they don't want to blow the entirety of his window. I mean, the Packers did it with Jordan Love. So JJ McCarthy might not start a game next year either. They might just stick with Sam Darnold. But I don't think that you look at the Vikings as a 14-win team the same way you look at the Lions.
No, you don't. They have to win a playoff game before you're even going to consider that. I guess the question is now for the Vikings, do you give him some kind of hometown discount deal that's a 4-year deal with a 2-year option, team option? Or if you're the Vikings, do you franchise tag Sam Darnold for one season? What do you think there? Because
wow,
I think I'm leaning as high as a price as the franchise tag is. I think I'm leaning the franchise tag route.
No, 100%. It's like it's the worst thing you could do to him. But yeah, I guess I hadn't even thought of that part of it. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Franchise tag him, and I don't know how long they will be able to continue to hold on to Daniel Jones either. But yeah, I think with Sam should return, and he's proven he can play, and I think he's much better than what we saw over the last 2 weeks. And I don't know what happened to their line; it just disappeared. But at the same time, like, he's proven he can win some games. He's a perfect bridge quarterback. I think the teammates love him. So you got to bring him back. Yeah, franchise tagging him makes the most sense.
Well, and you just saw that Brian Flores is going to do his virtual interview with the Bears, which I find interesting because they're already starting to do in-person. They're doing an in-person video today. Right now, as we speak, the Bears are talking with Mike McCarthy. They might be on their way to Bavette's for a nice steak dinner in the basement, who knows, of that fine establishment or some other steak joint in the city, Chicago Cut, who knows, all these free shout outs, whatever. But they're going to take a hit losing their defensive coordinator. And then all of a sudden, the other thing, I mean, did you hear Paul Allen's, comments after? I shared them on the timeline yesterday where he was talking about the distraction of before the Green Bay game, how there was speculation from Jake Glazer that teams were going to try to trade for Kevin O'Connell.
Right.
And that Paul Allen, who's the voice of the Minnesota Vikings, he's the Jeff Joniak of the Minnesota Vikings, and he is very opinionated if you've ever heard Paul Allen talk.
He's great. He's great.
He's great.
I will tell anybody, if you ever want to get the best of Paul Allen, Google, was it Josh McCown, Cardinals, Vikings, peak Paul Allen right there.
Yeah, no, he was in rare form for this game on Monday. I heard a radio clip again, no Sam Darnold slander, but there was a point where he dropped back to pass and he slid up in the pocket and then he gets sacked and Paul Allen's like, you're holding on to it for too long. Throw the ball. And I just like, in my world of Bears, like that would never happen. Like Jeff Joniak would never call the quarterback out that way. Paul's just, I mean, Jeff's one of the greatest to ever do it. So all respect to him. I love Jeff. He's somebody that's been very friendly with me throughout the years of my Bears fandom. But Paul is just a whole nother level of just truth, just spilling out and passion for the team. And he had this radio hit or a podcast hit where he was talking about how that was a distraction. This whole report of Kevin O'Connell potentially being traded for, and his speculation and was that maybe it came from Kevin O'Connell's agent because he hadn't gotten a contract yet. Right. And so like, I don't know, you know me with the whole Kyle Shanahan stuff earlier in the year with Brad from San Fran. I'm like, my wheels started turning like, how can I sabotage the Minnesota Vikings right now? Like, that's all I was thinking about because I think Kevin O'Connell does a fantastic job. They're on the right track. I think they're a little ahead of the game than where Green Bay is right now as a 100%. Team, personally, especially with J.J. McCarthy in their pocket and then just trying to figure out how they want to go forward with that. But, yeah, so I know you said, hey, this is a Bears podcast, of course, but watching these teams,
I'm building to something.
Right. It's but that's the point, right? This is the landscape. And it was for the Bears, it was a good weekend, right? Overall. And now we go through this whole thing. And I know last week I asked you with the Lions who play here on Saturday, would we rather, if we were guaranteed that Ben Johnson was the coach, would we want him to get some experience all the way to the Super Bowl? And at that point, I think we both agreed that would be good. If we were guaranteed that Ben Johnson was going to be our coach, get experience all the way to the Super Bowl, maybe not win it, but just get there. Now I am so over this. I'm so over the speculation, all the rumors, all the sources, everything else that's going across, all these insiders with their knowledge of people close to Hallis Hall. I really need the Lions to lose on Saturday so we can get on with this because he obviously is the domino that needs to fall for everything else to come into place. And like, we just have no patience here in Chicago, and my patience has run thin. So now I am officially rooting against the Lions on Saturday. I hate it, but I've come to my conclusion.
Well, you know what? I would agree with you, but you just reminded me earlier about the Commander fans. I'm like, oh God.
I know I know it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, but yes, they will be obnoxious.
Yeah, they honestly, I forgot how bad they were. Like really just like, and I guess when you root for, I guess the Nationals won the World Series not too long ago. So that's not been completely inept, but the Bullets never win. Do they have a hockey team? I guess the Capitals won not too long ago. Why are they such a bad sports town for a team that's actually had a city a region, I should say, that's actually had some success? It's kind of interesting. I guess because the Commanders are the like default team. Like nobody really roots for those other teams, I would imagine. Right. There's probably like 5 people who root for the Nationals. I'm sure the hockey team has a small, like very fervent like fan base. But the whole reason, though, that I was bringing up the Vikings and the Packers to start the show is that one of the reasons why people would kept speculating, like, why would Ben Johnson want to go to this juggernaut of a division? Oh, this division's going to be too tough. And I'm like, 2 teams got exposed pretty blatantly over the weekend. And we just sat here and spent 20 minutes on steak and exposing those 2 teams for not being as great as people think that they are. Right. And I would show it. And by the way, like last year, oh God, everybody was ready to put Jordan Love into the Hall of Fame last year, along with CJ Stroud. So I'll just point that out to Commander fans, like, be careful. Be careful. Everybody was measuring gold jackets for those guys last year. We'll see how it goes. But I do think, though, I still want the Lions to experience a little bit more success because I'm willing to wait a couple of weeks. And if it ends up turning out that Ben Johnson ultimately is the guy. And I need to stay off social media because everybody's always so certain of, like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to the Raiders. Like he wants to work. They fired their GM. They did all this stuff. And I'm like, that's still and like, you talk about organizations that have not gotten it right over the last decade or so. The Raiders are certainly right there, regardless of whether Tom Brady is there or not. I still truly believe that Ben Johnson wants to go to Chicago. I do get a little worried, though, that Lou Anarumo is talking with Atlanta, because that's been one of my linchpins of this conspiracy arc, the Kerry Matheson board from Homeland, where you're like, well, like this whole thing started in motion because Lou Anarumo was fired for kind of no reason, but he's got the connection with these guys from Miami, so it would make sense that he would come around, be the defensive coordinator for Ben Johnson wherever he ends up. But let's talk about the quarterback, because over the last couple of days, Caleb Williams had an appearance with the St. Brown brothers, where they talked over a wide variety of subjects, including who should be the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Sammy, can we play the first one where Caleb talks about his ideal for a coach in the NFL?
Probably one of our last questions. Obviously, you guys, don't have a head coach. What are, like, if you could, build your head coach? Like,
Yeah.
What are some qualities that you'd want in your next head coach?
Strong-minded. A leader of men. I think that's a cool thing about what y'all got over there in Detroit.
So do you feel like, sorry about that, do you feel like you want your coach to be like offensive minded, or you want a big picture?
I want them,
and then have the coordinators.
Like selfishly, I want an offensive minded guy, so I can build with him and be with that coach for the next 19, 17, 15 years. And so I can also learn and grow and things like that from him and what he's seen and what he's gone through with maybe other QBs or been around. So that's selfishly. But if we get a overall like grand scheme coach and is good with time management, good with the clock, good with helping control the game, just because it's a big factor.
I listen. I don't want to put words into Caleb Williams' mouth.
Time management.
I don't know. I don't know what was in Caleb's heart when he was answering that question, but it seems like maybe he was taking a shot at the former head coach.
Yeah, I would say so. Time management. Like
very specific, knows how to use timeouts.
Knows how to use timeouts. I mean, wow.
Doesn't have a beard. His last name doesn't rhyme with loose.
Yeah. Didn't give me a nickname at training camp. Yeah. Hello. Certainly sounds like he wants the opposite of everything that Matt Eberflus was here in his rookie year. So that's interesting, and it's crazy how the chickens can come home to roost with things like this, because going into the season, after Hard Knocks and after training camp and going into the year, we weren't getting these vibes. But then as the season comes out and you things start to unfold and the honesty starts to come out, because one of the other things, and shout out to the St. Brown brothers, they do a very laid back style where they just kind of, take it any direction. And at one point they brought up Hard Knocks, and Caleb said, like, it was fine. They did a nice job. They weren't, they made it real smooth for us, but it was invasive, is what Caleb said. That, when they're in meeting rooms and there's a camera, quote unquote, hidden camera that's on the wall, they know it's there. And at one point, like, there was things being said in the meeting room and they asked the camera, "Can you hear us?" And the camera shook its head. Yes. Like, yes, there's somebody watching in in some kind of studio, truck, and knows what they're saying. And so Caleb said that caused them to not say things that they might have said otherwise had there not been a camera there. So I think that kind of spilled over into the season. As much as we all enjoyed getting that behind the scenes look of Hard Knocks, and I was a big advocate for it. But looking back now and hearing Caleb's comments, it probably wasn't the best for this team with a rookie quarterback and a first-year offensive coordinator, where they needed to get some things out of the way before the season started. And clearly, as you got into week 3 and beyond, and you have players calling out their coaches for, not having the first 15 scripted plays, not, too much responsibility at the line of scrimmage, or how they're dealing with timeouts and game management and end of clock situations. To me, like, that stuff should have been nipped in the bud in the preseason, but you had other distractions going on during that time.
Yeah, you know what? And it gave you a false sense of what the head coach was like and things of that nature. And for me, I was right along with you, felt like it was something the Bears needed to do, was to be on Hard Knocks and let this be a good experience for them, because we had seen other teams go through this. The Lions became one of the darlings of the NFL because partly what we saw on Hard Knocks, and we thought, and perhaps it would have worked out that way if the Bears had been winning in convincing. I guess it always is
bingo if they had the right coaches who aren't afraid to be themselves, right? Because Dan Campbell, when you watch Hard Knocks, he was everything he is now on that Hard Knocks, spilling his authentic self and his heart and soul to the team. And you can remember that trickling down to the players. I can't remember. I think it was maybe Jamal Williams, like pleading with his team and like in tears crying about how much they meant to each other. And with the Bears, you had a coach that really wasn't being himself. Yeah. And so now that trickles down to the rest of the team where nobody's really operating genuinely and with authenticity in front of the Hard Knocks cameras. So I agree with you. It could have easily gone differently. And I'm not blaming Hard Knocks for this team.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But I agree to your point, better coaching, they wouldn't have let that be something that kept them from being real to each other in those meeting rooms in training camp.
I also don't trust any coach that doesn't cry now. That is like my thing. Like I cannot trust it. If a coach isn't crying, I'm like, how much do you really care? Like I was sitting there on Sunday, excuse me. This is almost embarrassing. I'm not embarrassed. The sideline we were on Sunday, it had a short fence. So the parents are really on top of us. And we're up, I think 2-0 at this point, maybe 3. We'd almost put this away. And so you have to take 2 players out, and like this is the end of the tournament. So this is you're coming out. Pulling these girls out, I couldn't do it. I was like, I almost had to write it on the board of who was out. Like I can't talk because I'm crying because I'm so proud of these girls. And I never, like, looking back now, the signs were there with Eberflus, and I feel a little bit like a fool. Like, yeah, I got it. I got caught up into it. I thought it was cool. And I mean, in a weird way, and I've been on, numerous podcasts and radio shows over the last couple of weeks, and they bring up the Hail Mary or the Hail Mary play against the Commanders, and they're like, yeah, like, how does that sit with you? I'm like, honestly, it did us a favor. Like, who knows? Like, we would have been 5-2. We probably would have been 6-3 at some point. And you know what? It's 6-3. And if that turns into 7 wins, it turns into 8 wins. Now we're talking about an organization that would be selling us, like, give it another year.
Yep.
We got it. Everything's locked in. We know what we're doing now. And we would possibly miss out on Ben Johnson because, like, they probably would have rolled through it with another year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is funny because, like, we play the Caleb Williams clip, we want to talk about but everything comes back to the coaches, right? This is like the gravitational pull of the conversation. And so it is interesting to see how this all unfolded this year. I'll say this much, and then we can get back to talking about Caleb. But the one thing I'll say is I didn't want to bring Matt Eberflus back a year ago at this time.
I know.
And then as we went through the offseason, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was hoping for the best. I did see a pathway to this team being successful, despite the fact that I thought they could have fired Matt Eberflus a year ago. And I did give him credit. Throughout training camp, I thought they had a good plan for Caleb Williams. It looked like he was progressing nicely. They even started out the year, like you said, 4-2, almost got to 5-2. It wasn't pretty the whole way through. And so I do think that the players, as we get into next year, once they finally figure out who their coach is going to be, like, I'm not giving the players a pass. That's the other thing I'm not going to do this offseason is they hold a certain responsibility to this. And if all it took was one debacle in Washington for you guys just to completely let go of the rope, and I'm sorry, You can't tell me that it went any other way than that. That's exactly what
100%.
They mentally let go of the rope because they saw their coach fail in a situation that he failed in 4 times the year before. But you were still above 500 at that point.
Yeah.
You still had a chance to fight. And okay, you lose in Arizona, not pretty. But what you did against New England the week after that was just flat out giving up on the organization, your coach, your fans, your teammates. And that's unacceptable. That's not something that any of these players should be proud of or dismissing because they want to put it all on Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus. Like, there has to be a big wake-up call from the players in this locker room, and they all need to start acting like leaders. Not just the captains. The whole team needs to start owning a sense of leadership for themselves and each other, and I can't emphasize that enough. So, to me, and then going back to Caleb Williams, it certainly seems like through this podcast, he talks about Marcus Freeman and he's like, he should stay in Notre Dame. He's doing a great job over there. But Ben Johnson, he was like, all right, bring it on.
I think we have another clip of that. Sammy, do we have another? I think we have one more clip from this podcast from the St. Brown brothers. Unless they're now they're
got a fire to him. I don't want people that doesn't have a fire. I think I got a certain fire about me inside of me that, that
Right.
certain people can't coach or certain people can't be around or it doesn't work in that way. And so, I think that's a big part of it. And so if it's Ben, then,
Nigga said.
Yeah, I mean,
Jeez.
if it's not, then it is what it is.
I think he's letting us know.
Yeah.
He's letting us know who he wants to be the next head coach of the Bears.
And it almost felt like with the St. Brown brothers that they were like, because EQ, who formerly played for the Bears, he was telling Amon-Ra, like, let it go, man, he's gone. And so it really felt like that they were kind of ahead of the game on that. I'm sure, Caleb's not getting, texts every minute from Ryan Poles, but I'm sure he's getting some updates. I'd have to imagine. I would hope so.
Right.
And somewhat involved in this process in some regard. So it was interesting to hear that and Caleb putting that out there because, hey, all we have is Caleb getting access to Ben Johnson's wide receiver and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tom Brady and the Raiders, Tom Brady gets to be on the sidelines calling the game for Fox on Saturday and get to schmooze up with the team and maybe wink at Ben Johnson a few times on the field while he's doing his pregame routine before he calls the game. So I'm glad some people were mad that, Caleb went on a Lions players podcast. I liked it because send the message over to Ben Johnson as what's the most direct way you can do it without it being tampering. There it is right there. Get on Amon-Ra's podcast.
I loved it. I really did. And everybody who's making such a big deal about Tom Brady's on the sideline. Hey, you understand the Bears played the Lions twice this year. Like Caleb Williams was on the field twice with Ben Johnson, talking to him, showcasing what he can do, showing everybody what he was able to do. Yep. I think, what is it? Like, was there 4 quarterbacks this season who've thrown for 2 or more touchdowns against the Lions this year? Mm-hmm. And Caleb Williams is 2 of them.
Well, and in that Thanksgiving game, their defense hadn't given up a touchdown in like 12 quarters. And then Caleb had 3 in the second half of that game in Detroit. So that's a good point that I haven't heard anybody bring up. Like, yeah, Brady's certainly getting a tryout run here this Saturday, but Caleb got to show him what he was all about in person.
Yeah, I think that means a lot, as much, if not more, to Ben Johnson than Tom Brady sitting there all chiseled jaw on the sideline. Ben Johnson might not even like Tom Brady. Like, Ben Johnson was part of the Dolphins organization who might not care for Tom Brady at all. Now, I'm sure he probably has some respect for him and stuff like that, but it's not like a fait accompli that look at what John Elway went through for years as a guy who was running an organization, having trouble finding a quarterback. I mean, he did get Peyton Manning to come in, but still, like, it's a very difficult thing. And whenever I hear somebody whenever I hear somebody and they're talking up the Raiders, you're like, okay, there's a lot of a friend of mine, Vinny Bonsignor, who covers the Raiders for the Review Journal out there, is like, there's a lot of momentum building. You're like, momentum. The odds just dropped into like he became a bigger favorite to take over as the Bears guy. To me,
you know this guy that tweeted that?
Vinny Bonsignor?
You know Vinny?
I know Vinny.
I didn't like that tweet. You tell Vinny I didn't appreciate that tweet.
I don't think that I didn't text him.
Yeah, let him
know. Hey, you also said Zamir White was going to be fine. Like, listen, you. I feel like the Ben Johnson thing to the Bears. This is the parallel that I've driven, and I hope to be on the right side of history on this one. It feels a lot like all the people who are saying that Shohei Ohtani was going to the Dodgers. And you know what? And now I sat here and I had to get rid of all my Shohei Ohtani cards because he's with the Dodgers. And by the way, speaking of sports cards, at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you are a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Sky, or Fire, we've got you covered with an extensive selection of sports, memorabilia, and collectibles. And in addition to all their Chicago-focused items, they also offer a vast collection of other sports, other personalities, all at your fingertips at Windy City Sports Cards. If you do want a Shohei Ohtani card, and you should probably, he's still a delight, go out there and check out our friends at Windy City Sports Cards. But it does feel like the speculation has been there for so long that regardless of what's coming in, and we saw this with Ohtani, where it's like, oh, he was going to be on a plane to Toronto, or maybe he goes back to the Angels, or maybe he's going to sign with the Padres. But like ultimately, the thing that everybody thought was going to happen happened. LeBron James going to the Lakers, like these kind of things. I just feel like it's, and listening to the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing and EQ doing his thing, like I think they know. And I think they know. Like, I think the Lions already know, like, yeah, he's going to the Bears. And
Caleb legitimately thought Ben Johnson was calling him the other day, So, and he's so far down the road thinking that might be the route that he called the number back, and it was a couple Bears fans trying to mess with him. So I agree.
By the way, what did you think? Like, everybody's like, how embarrassing for Caleb. I'm like, it's not like Caleb was like, I thought Caleb had a kind of a fun reaction to it. Like, how else would you do it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you would react. Like, yeah, hey, great to hear from you.
Right. Well, I mean, he didn't use like the pocket awareness wasn't great, right? Like, you got to know, like, well, they just interviewed him virtually. They can't hire him until after he's done.
Oh my God,
with the Lions.
NFL fans don't know this, and he might not but you're in the inner circle. In like, hey, I'm going to sign with you. You can't say anything yet, but yeah, I'm coming to the Bears. Like, right. And he probably already knows. He probably already knows one way or the other. Hey, that's my conjecture.
No. I mean, again, and he played it right with the kids. He had fun with it, and then he revealed on the podcast. Go watch it for yourselves. But that after he got off, then he vented because he was pissed. He had to change his number, and he got tricked. But he played it fine with the kids. I will say this much. When we went into this whole thing, it was the Bears, the Patriots, the Jags, and the Raiders who jumped in all of a sudden at the last second.
Yeah.
And when you looked at that landscape and you're like, man, the Patriots, they got Drake May, great organization, very intriguing. That might be our stiff competition there. They hire Mike Vrabel. They're out. And now, like, it's all Raiders versus Bears, where a week ago at this time it was Jags versus Bears. We went on CHGO After Dark. We had Taylor Dowell on from Jacksonville because she does a great job covering both the Bears and the Jaguars. And
I was on that show.
Right, you were on that show, and it's like, so we're like sitting there going, okay, they have potentially an open spot if they're going to fire Trent Baalke, open spot at head coach. They keep Baalke, but you have this quarterback in Trevor Lawrence in place in a division that's winnable, right? But now it's Bears versus Raiders. And aside from the Tom Brady allure, which it's a real effect, and I think the one reason why Bears fans aren't counting their chickens on this, like, okay, this guy's a threat. Tom Brady has influence. But outside of that, what do they have? Aiden O'Connell's their
But
quarterback.
they fired their GM.
They fired their GM, Tom Telesco. Outside of that, they have a lot of work to do on their roster. They don't have an answer at their quarterback. They don't have an ability to draft a quarterback where they're currently at.
Yeah.
One that to me would be enticing enough for a guy like Ben Johnson who passed about other opportunities last offseason. So like, and if you're going to go to the Raiders, if you're Ben Johnson, you're going to go up against what? Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Bo Nix.
And Bo Nix.
Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton. Those are the coaches you want to coach against Ben Johnson. It's certainly tough in the NFC North. There's no doubt. But as we talked about to start this show, to bring this all the way back around, look at it. The Vikings and the Lions, or the Vikings and the Packers right now, things are going good, but hey, maybe you got a better shot here in the NFC North, and you have a quarterback.
And you're familiar with what you're up against.
Right.
The devil that you know is sometimes more pertinent than the one that you don't know. And I don't know. It's really interesting. And when I mentioned the thing about the GM, I feel like the Raider fans they're putting a little too much stock into that. Like they're really like, this is our pitch. And I'm like, yeah, but like not having a quarterback is such a huge issue.
Even if the Broncos and Chargers weren't playing well, you have the Chiefs in your division. Yeah. You have to play Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid every year. And oh, by the way, they're in your conference too. Your only route to getting to the Super Bowl. Like I don't like, hey, I like our chances. Like before I thought the Jags they had a better shot, because
I thought the Jags had a really legitimate,
right.
Like for all the reasons, and if they would have fired their general manager, I'd almost be like, ew. I would almost be like not even expecting
so we're just gonna have to be patient, right? Like
I would just rather be patient.
There's this long process still taking place, and we definitely still feel like the front runners. Vegas thinks we're the front runners. Like, we just got to be patient. At least we got football games every weekend to get us there, because we're gonna drive ourselves crazy talking about this.
No, and it really does, and it's like now the best case, and I do sort of hope the Lions can get to the championship game. They can lose to the Eagles. That would be fine. But I would love for them, now that you mentioned the whole thing with Jaden Daniels, you're like, yeah, I would like to see if Jaden Daniels doesn't throw 2 touchdowns against this Lions defense, don't believe for a second that that's not going to be brought up at some point. You're like, oh, interesting.
The Commanders, I think, are ranked like 30th in the NFL in rushing defense. So expect a heavy running attack from the Lions. I expect the Lions to win. But if Washington, they're on like this miracle run, right? Yeah. Everything's going their way. They doinked it in to beat the Bucks. To me, I think that I think their luck's run out, but it also just wouldn't surprise me. Everything for them has been fate this year. So, and then of course, if the Lions lose, then I'll be able to put out more of my Bragg's facts, which will be, that the Bears have as many playoff wins as the Lions, Vikings,
even
and
though Packers, they were the number 1 seed and all that stuff.
We'll be able to put some more facts out there that may or may not trigger some people. I can't control how people, take in the information I'm putting out there.
No, that's out of your control. And I'm trying to figure out, looking back, because obviously Commanders are on an epic run. But when you look at the quarterbacks that the Commanders have beaten, they're like, oh, look how good they've been. So they beat Trey Lance, Michael Penix in his second or third start, Kenny Pickett. I can't even remember who the Saints quarterback was who they beat. Was it Will Levis? Cooper Rush, and then they lost. Oh, they lost to Cooper Rush. What am I saying? They lost to Cooper Rush. They lost to Jalen Hurts. So you look at these quarterbacks that he's beaten, and I'm going to talk. He beat Tyreek Stevenson against the Bears. That's how we'll count that one. Then it was bested Daniel Jones, lost to Russ, lost to Jalen, lost to Cooper Rush, but beat Will Levis, beat. Who was it? Cedric Bonner? I don't know. Kenny Pickett, Michael Penix, Trey Lance. Oh, he's as cool as a cucumber against these bottom feeders. It's like a guy who, when you're watching wrestling and he's beating all the jobbers, it's like, okay, well now you're up against John Cena. Let's see how it goes.
Right.
Okay, you're now in the main event against John. You're not even. No, actually, this is Elimination Chamber.
It wasn't Spencer Rattler, was it?
Spencer Rattler, yeah.
Was it the other guy?
Ian Book. I don't know. Actually, is Ian Book even on the same? No, he's in Philly now, right? Yeah, whatever. But hold on. We got some questions though. Yeah, we do want some questions. Do you have time still?
Of course. I got a question for you. But
by the way, these super chats, break them in. Don't make them wait. Ben Johnson is a Raider, and I can't wait to see your entire fan base in shambles when it happens. Trump trying to leech off the Lions. How pathetic. You're leeching off the Lions.
Yeah, wait, that's what he's doing.
Why are the Raider fans so
wait, he's trying to leech off the Lions, but he's calling us pathetic?
Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
What's wrong?
Go hire Matt Nagy, Raiders. That's a perfect hire for you. Matt Nagy, maybe go for a Pete Carroll, do something like that.
Where did this guy come from?
I don't know.
He paid $5 to the program. So
thank you. No, I appreciate that. That's can't wait to spend that at Aosa Coffee. Is there another one, Sammy? Adam and Braggs, who makes the final decision on the coach? Warren, George, Poles. Honestly, Scottish Bear, thank you as always for being here. I think it comes down to Caleb. I think that you can ultimately frame this decision is in what's best for Caleb Williams and whomever's in Ben Johnson's camp. And there's mixed report or whatever. I think that ultimately, if you sell it like this is the brightest mind this year in football, actually for the last couple of years, this is what we need to get Caleb Williams to be a long-term success for the Bears. I think that's where the ultimate decision lies. Yeah, or do I give the Bears too much credit?
Well, I think both of us always give the Bears too much credit. I think Ryan Poles makes that decision because that's what they said is how this is going to work. They're all going to be involved in the search, but Ryan Poles will be the one that ultimately makes this decision. So I have to trust them at their word. And so where some people were like, I think Mike Florio said, reading the tea leaves, the only way you're going to get Ben Johnson is if you fire the GM. Well, if that's the case, which I don't agree that is, but if that's the case, then Ben Johnson won't be a Bear because I believe Ryan Poles is making that decision.
You're talking about Mike Florio, the fantasy guy from the NFL? What does he know?
Oh, little fantasy rivalry going on here.
Wait, who is it? Which Mike Florio are you talking about? Is there the guy from
PFT Pro Football?
That guy's even worse. He's even worse. I don't believe either one of those guys.
I talked to Florio at the Super Bowl last year. He was nice. Why? What's
the Pro Football Talk guy or the guy?
Yeah, the Pro Football Talk guy. I would never talk to any other fantasy guy but you, Adam. Yeah, of course.
Never.
In fact, I will. Never. If a fantasy dude tries to come up to me, I literally push him over. I push him.
Brad Evans,
get out of my face.
Get out of here.
Exactly.
I don't want to see you, Dave Richard.
Exactly.
Boom. Get out of here. That's what I want. I don't know. I think that people are. I think that if I think Ryan Poles. I don't know. I don't think Ben Johnson has that big a deal with him because it would have been known by now. Because if Ben Johnson's always been enamored with the Bears coaching position, I think he would have been less enamored knowing that Ryan Poles was probably safe. So I don't know.
Well, I think this much. When he does become available to interview, if he takes an in-person interview with the Bears and they fly him out on their private jet like they flew Mike McCarthy out on the private jet today, then that means that he does not care about Ryan Poles' presence within the Chicago Bears, right? That much we can agree on if we get to that point.
Fair enough. Yeah. By the way, did you say you had a question for me as well?
I do have a question for you.
Oh, geez.
My question is,
okay,
who do you got winning the national championship on Monday?
Who cares? I literally.
Why you got to do that? Why you gotta do? It's gonna be a fun game.
What are we doing here? I'll go with.
I know you hate the college football. You're taking Notre Dame. Okay.
Yeah. No way.
I don't know.
Listen. I don't get to watch as much college football in season like I did back in the day. I'm now like similarly, like I don't know if you heard me talking about like catching up with the challenge, like catching up with the challenge. By the way, I don't spoil it for me, anybody. I'm not going to read the comments. So I've got one more daily left before the 2-part finale. I usually, and coming into the season, I love Johnny Bananas. I love Derek, who is actually a Bears fan. We should get Derek on the show. Remind me, Sammy, we got to get Derek on the show. I want him to weigh in on the coaches challenge. And but I got to be caught up on I got to find out who the winner is. And I actually like Corey, who hates Johnny Bananas. So I watch those shows and I have like such angst watching it. But that's the way that I watch college football now, is like, well, obviously I know who's going to win because all that stuff. But I don't get to watch college football till this time of year. This is what I do now. I go out and I play golf. I come in, I watch some college football, watch some key games, go back, watch and catch up with some of these players heading into the fantasy season. And then I go coach soccer. That's pick up my kids, go coach soccer. So what I think that Notre Dame, and the limited stuff that I've seen, Notre Dame, I'm really impressed with their coaching staff. And I know like talent wise, whatever, they still do a great job bringing in talent. I like the coaching staff. And one of the games I did watch live this year, I did sit down and watch Ohio State and Michigan. And I'm still flummoxed that Ohio State was even allowed into the playoffs after what happened at the end of that game against Michigan, fighting over a flag. Like they should have been bound. Who let them in? I thought they were eliminated. That's why the first time, who did Ohio State open up with?
The Ohio State police were pepper spraying the Michigan players.
That should have been cause for a disqualification. Who was their first game against? Like SMU or Rutgers or whomever? I don't know. I don't even remember who it was. Their first playoff game, Ohio State.
Oh, I thought it
was just some bowl game. Same thing with Notre Dame. I thought like Notre Dame was playing Indiana in a bowl game. And I'm like, oh, what bowl game is this? They're like,
you've been hating on this playoff from the start. And
for good reason.
No, not for good reason. It's for your own reasons. And the playoffs have been fun. The first round wasn't great. Ohio State beat Tennessee. Thank you, Kevin Wood. But
wait, who did they beat?
Tennessee. And you know what?
I thought that was the Citrus
And they
Bowl.
trampled Tennessee. Then they trampled Oregon. And but you know what? Overall, the playoffs have been great. You hated on it, so you're biased now. Just be honest with your.
I'm still hating. I still think it's dumb.
Well,
the regular season is now as bad as college basketball's regular season.
See, now slow down hating on college basketball.
I call college basketball. I know I like it, but I still wish that it mattered more.
No,
I just wish when you're watching a game, like, hey, okay, listen, I call a Fullerton game. I'll say this on the broadcast. Fullerton's playing Long Beach State. Like, okay, this is great. It doesn't matter ultimately until we get to Henderson. Nevada. That's when it matters.
They're fighting over rankings, fighting over their net rating that's going to get them the right seed for March Madness. So I don't agree. You know what? There's no system that's perfect. The BCS.
I disagree.
The BCS wasn't perfect.
There's a perfect system.
There is not a perfect system. What is the perfect system?
The English Premier League.
Oh,
they play 38 games. You play everybody home and away. Who has the most points? Done. That's it. The best team wins all the time. It's insanity. There's never a controversy. Hey, eighth seeded Liverpool win. No, it's like,
you know what? This is the country of Rocky Balboa, okay? And the underdogs, okay?
That's different. That's a prize fighter.
You got to have the underdogs, right? When Butler in basketball made it all the way to the national championship, Gordon Hayward off the backboard almost beats Duke in the national championship. That'd have been the greatest shot in the history of sports had it gone down the well.
Butler was a conference winner. They should have been in the playoff.
All right.
I sign off on the conference winners being playoff. I listen, my idea for college football is you get four divisions, 4 conferences between 16 and 18 or 16 and 20, whatever it is, and allow relegation because that should be a thing. And then you just have them play And then at the end of that, the two division winners in the conference play, and then whoever wins the conference goes into the playoffs. Then you basically have an 18 playoff. Everybody gets a fair shot. There's no wild cards. There's no seat. Like, well, it's like this is the way it is. And it would be fair and it would be equitable. By the way, we do have a funny meme about the Bears interviewing so many people. What do we got, Sammy? Sammy's proud of this. Oh my gosh. Come on. Who made this? Who made this? Who we got? Matt Campbell.
You didn't greenlight this off the cutting floor before the show?
This is good. Mike Kafka. Oh, and I remember the girl in red. Yeah. No, Tom, that's Thomas Brown. No, wait, that is Mike. Who is it? I can't find it. Wait, hold on. Looking this up. I'm trying to remember. Okay. Is this Jesse? Who is the guy? That's not Nick Vital. By the way, let me ask you though, if something happens, and it's not Ben Johnson for whatever reason, do you have a plan B? Is there somebody here like, hey, I wouldn't mind this guy being the coach?
I gotta say, we've talked a lot about Vrabel, who's off the table now, and I've made my case for why, even though Bears fans hate him and everyone hates the idea of Cliff Kingsbury, I have a lot of respect for what he's done in Washington this year, taking that offense to where it's gone and, developing Jaden Daniels. But nobody seems to want him. Fine, I accept that. I will say I talked to Rob Domofsky today on CHGO Bears, and anybody that has a chance to watch that interview in the second half of our show, I honestly would encourage you to do so, including you, Adam, because I thought Rob Domofsky did a fantastic job of selling me on the idea of Mike McCarthy.
Oh God,
I know.
I'm not watching it.
Now. Well, you got to keep an open mind. All right, this isn't the college football playoff. We're talking about the head coach of the Bears. And if you listen to Rob sell it, he made some really good points about Mike McCarthy's capabilities. And so I am coming around. We have tunnel vision, right, to Ben Johnson. And I get that. We should all have the expectation that if we want Ben Johnson, Ryan Post wants Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams wants Ben Johnson, we should all want Ben Johnson. I'm with you. But that doesn't mean that we have to hate on every candidate beneath him. And I think Mike McCarthy, after some of the things I'm learning and coming around to the idea, I am starting to open my eyes to this. And one of the biggest ones is how good he is at developing quarterbacks. And that's something we need, right? So he's a head coach. He knows how to run everything, get the culture in the locker room right. But most importantly, he's going to help develop your quarterback. He helped develop Aaron Rodgers into the player that he is. Yes, he has some game management things that haven't been perfect. I concede that. But no coach is without flaws, except for you, Adam, coaching your kids.
I got flaws. No.
And Phil Atoshin, draft Dr. Phil Atoshin, great coach. Other than you two, there's no coach out there that doesn't have flaws.
No, I got flaws.
So I just think that Mike McCarthy is starting to become my option number 2.
Is he going to somehow? So what's his plan if we get into the NFC Championship game against the Eagles? And it's like, how does he hurt Jalen Hurts? That's how he got his Super Bowl. Like that whole Mike McCarthy run to the Super Bowl, like the things that had to happen, like getting into the playoffs was a miracle. Jay Cutler getting injured was a miracle. Rashard Mendenhall fumbling that football.
But if you remember, when the Packers won that Super Bowl, they had like 20 guys on IR that year. They had a bunch of injuries themselves. So you're not being very fair there. Look at how you're making me defend freaking the Packers. Look at what you've made me become here on this show.
Gosh. Jesse, I don't know. I can just never imagine like Forrest Gregg becoming. Forrest Gregg used to be the coach of the Packers.
I said that Mike McCarthy has resting failure face. Like every picture you ever see with him, and just this picture of failure. But
he looks like he looks like every dude at Applebee's when you tell him that there's no more curly fries left.
they got their he looks or that they got his order wrong. There's and so 100% he's got resting failure face. But outside of that, I'm telling you, Rob is a really good reporter. He did a really good job of swaying me today. And I'm just being honest. I'm sorry. I'm not, I'm just being honest with everybody. I don't know what the right answer is, but I like the idea of a guy like Mike McCarthy who has the experience, has had success, in multiple places, dealing with two different types of ownerships in Green Bay where they're owned by the fans. And you're the lead facing guy, like Rob pointed out, like through all that Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers controversy at the end, like they didn't have like an owner ahead of him that spoke to the media. He had to eat all that, right? And so then you go to Dallas and you've got Jerry Jones breathing down your neck. So like he's been in some pretty big spots to where you come into Hallis Hall and and everything they're running with McCaskey and that operation there. Like, I don't think it's going to overwhelm him. He's been there and done that. He develops quarterbacks. That's the biggest thing. And he's also been able to hire some good coordinators along the way. You talk about how important it is for a coach to build a coaching staff. I can trust that he'll be able to do that as well. So, and I hate the moniker we could do worse, but it is the truth. If we're not going to get Ben Johnson and we end up with Mike McCarthy, we could do a hell of a lot worse. And I know Bears fans, that's like,
obviously, yeah.
That's like taking medicine you don't want to take. I get it. But you know what? You're going to take the medicine, damn it.
I'm not doing it.
Well, because we're going to get Ben Johnson. But but we're having all these hypothetical conversations, so I have to try to be fair to the conversation. Okay?
That's fair.
We're going to get Ben Johnson.
He was also Aaron Rodgers' coach, and Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears. Now the coach of the Bears owner is now your coach.
Don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about it.
I'm worried about that. It's so much.
We're undefeated in 2025. The Packers are 0-2, okay? We have a way better winning percentage than the Packers in 2025. That's all that matters. Anything that happened, the past is for losers and cowards, okay?
Yep.
We're talking about this year. So I don't care what happened before. And don't worry about those hillbillies in Wisconsin talking about whatever they're going to talk about if we hire Mike McCarthy.
All right, fair enough. I would still, honestly, if we're going to go veteran coach, I prefer Pete Carroll. He develops quarterbacks too, going all the way back to Carson Palmer at USC. Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez. He was not a part of Sam Darnold. But still, even coming to the NFL, realized that Matt Flynn was hot garbage and went with Russell Wilson, even regardless of the money that they paid. So I think that he brings a lot of the same attributes that Mike McCarthy would be. And I just kind of like Pete Carroll better anyways as well. And having worked with him before, when I was at the Orange County Register, he was at USC. I always sort of like Pete Carroll. So that's a bias thing. I also, though, wouldn't dismiss somebody like I don't know if it would be a slap in the face to then be like, okay, we didn't get Ben Johnson, but we're taking Aaron Glenn. You're like, are we doing this? But I don't know. Aaron Glenn might be heading to the Jets or something like that. But
well, I'm rooting for him to get a job because I want both coordinators gone.
Yeah, I know. We want him gone. Yeah, exactly. We want, regardless. So for the guy who paid $5 to say Ben Johnson was going to the Raiders, the silver lining of that is that Ben Johnson is gone. So there's a small modicum of a victory right there. Ben Johnson being gone from Detroit is going to be huge for us. As much as it was huge for us to have you here today, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We will be back. I'll do a sick picks at some point this week. I promise this week. This week's a lot better. Last week was a little bit crazy. I'll get on the sick picks. Greg, are we doing THGO on Friday? CHGO?
Yes, CHGO
Okay.
Friday at 1 p.m. Central. I'll be live. And if you
what's that my time? 11?
I think that's 11 your
I
time.
gotta adjust my tea time to make sure.
As long as you're good, I don't want to mess up your golf game, of course.
I gotta get out early. I can't be one of those people that
After Dark's gonna be on hiatus for a little bit. And so we're gonna start doing Friday shows on CHGO, and I'll be hosting them. And as long as Adam's around, when he's available, he's gonna jump on at times. So little adjusted schedule for those of you that watch both of this fine program, and of course CHU.
We have a lot of overlaps. Yeah, so we'll be back. We'll be back on Friday, and then I'm going to take my sick picks after that, so you can have those on Saturday or
All
Friday,
right. All right.
depending on what Sammy's up to.
Looking forward to it.
How annoyed he is with me. But in any event, thank you everybody for being here. We appreciate you. For Greg, I'm Adam. Bear down, and Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois.